Hey there, and welcome back to SIIA's Artificial Intelligence Spotlight. SIIA, the Software and Information Industry Association, is the principal trade association for the software and digital content industry. In this week's Artificial Intelligence Spotlight, we're going to take a look at FICO's Anti-Money Laundering Threat Score tool, which in essence uses artificial intelligence to help financial compliance analysts detect money laundering or even terrorist financing activities. And one of the reasons why we want to take a look at anti-money laundering detection is that increasingly terrorist organizations and dangerous criminals finance their operation by laundering money in global financial institutions, which presents a huge public policy problem for regulators and policymakers. So to provide some background here, recently regulators have really been pushing financial institutions to report suspicious activity through what are called suspicious activity reports. And these suspicious activity reports have become really strictly more enforced. For example, in 2014, JP Morgan was fined $1.7 billion after failing to identify any red flags that Bernie Madoff had been running a Ponzi scheme and laundering money through bank accounts and transactions at JP Morgan. Another problem that financial institutions are having is that with these enormous piles of data that they're getting, it's nearly impossible for financial analysts and compliance analysts to sift through all this abundance of information. And finally, another problem is that money laundering cases usually deal with multiple accounts or interactions. For example, Bernie Madoff didn't just have one interaction that defined his whole Ponzi scheme. He had a plethora of interactions and accounts. But when using traditional anti-money laundering software, it only detects individual cases. So analysts have a really, really tough time of putting all of these individual cases together to form an actual red flag and file these suspicious activity reports. So as a result, a lot of these financial institutions have sought to create more productive mechanisms so that compliance analysts can sift through these enormous piles of data and more efficiently report suspicious activity to regulators. And FICO's anti-money laundering threat score is a perfect example of this. So the threat score incorporates machine learning to generate its anti-money laundering tool. And specifically, the AML threat score prioritizes investigation cues for these suspicious activity reports. FICO's Scott Zoldi goes on to say that it uses transactional profiling technology, customer behavior sorted lists, and self-calibrating models that adapt to changing dynamics in the banking environment. So to break that down, in essence, what this anti-money laundering tool is, it creates a threat score of 1 to 999, where then compliance analysts are able to go back in and identify which of these transactions or interactions have a high likelihood of suspicious activity, so they can file these reports quicker and even more accurately. And in this way, these financial institutions do not just avoid fines, but they also help law enforcement identifying criminals and terrorist financing linked with specific bank accounts or transactions. And I think we've really been hammering this home lately in other artificial intelligence spotlights, but like we had mentioned in previous machine learning tools or artificial intelligence tools, FICO's anti-money laundering threat score doesn't displace work, but rather functions as a result of human input and requires human expertise. And what I mean by human expertise is that these compliance analysts have to go back and look at whether the outputs of the machine learning algorithm actually represent real threats, or they require the need for a suspicious activity report. So without the human expertise to decipher these real threats, this machine learning tool would just generate more false positives, feed them back into the system, and then use this faulty data to regenerate more false positives. So in essence, you would just keep adding on these false positives, sort of creating a vicious feedback loop where regulators would never know, and they would be getting fed an abundance of information on suspicious activity that may turn out to just be false positive data. And so in this sense, machine learning tools not only contribute to a greater social well-being by facilitating more accurate and efficient anti-money laundering tools, but also help supplement human work and expertise like we have highlighted previously. And that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed learning about FICO's new anti-money laundering detection tool. and we hope you stay tuned next time.